Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 1000 Gurus. Today's guest is Aiden Pham. Air horn. Another one.
Hello.
There you go. Nice.
Hi,
Thank
it's
you.
me.
Thank you, Aiden, for being here. I appreciate it. You are Guru number 16, I believe.
Hey.
Yeah, 16 of season two. So yeah, this is gonna be fun. I will go into how I know you, and I know it's a little extensive because we go kind of way back. So we met in college at UCI. Even though we were both in the dance community there, we never danced on the same team. Still haven't, but
RP.
but yeah, I'd say that like in college we're like kind of in the same circles, kind of acquaintances. We're never really
Mhm,
like close friends. And then we reconnected again after we both did the 17 Super Project with Untitled.
mhm.
And then that was back in the summer of 2023. And then you joined Team BUK for a year, and then now you're one of the board members for Collide, and you do projects with P&D. We also do stand up comedy together because I wanted to take stand up 201 and then at this comedy theater in Huntington Beach.
Mhm.
And then so you took 101 while you took 201 with me. So that was kind of interesting. So we've been doing open mics on and off for the last year, and then we hang out a lot. I consider you a close friend, and one of the few people that like I feel like who I hang out with are similar stage of life as me because
Mhm.
I'll do hang out with like a lot of younger people, like on the college team I'm in, and then some of my own friends, and then some older people like at work.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, any clarifications on that or your bio? I know I'll have read your bio by this point in the show.
Yeah, I would clarify to say that when we met in UCI, it wasn't just that we were in the same circles or that we had danced together, but more so that you had been one of the first people to teach me,
Mm.
like, anything about dance.
Mm.
So for me, I have this history of, like, really looking up to you and, like, aspiring to get to where you're at.
Mm.
So,
I appreciate that. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm glad. I'm glad we made this that much of an impact, or at least I did. Because that was Casa, right?
Yeah.
Casa Dance Off. So you hadn't danced before that, and that was kind of
Mhm.
like the first thing. Yeah, for me, I don't know. For people who don't know, when you go to one of the UCs and you have Casa Dance Off, um, it's very like rough because
Mhm.
the dance practice hours are even worse than competitive teams. It's like 10, 12, 14-hour practices, which are
Yeah.
insane. And there's only like 10% of them are dancers. So for example, you have like a bunch of freshmen. It's only for first years, freshmen like fall quarter. And you'll have like maybe 40, maybe 50 or whatever. It's like a large number of freshmen.
Mhm.
And maybe 5 to 10% of them actually have dance experience. So you have long practices where a lot of people are beginners and you have a handful of actual like people with experience. And then you have choreographers to come in and teach them. And so you have this kind of like boot camp hazing Korean club, but like
Yeah.
competing with other UCs, and it's so intense. But some of the alumni from Casa Dance Off are like some heavy hitters in the dance community, so that's kind of what draws people to it.
Mhm.
And it's like a fun first year experience, like at UC.
Yeah. And it's not, UC specific or
Oh
I
yeah.
think
Oh,
back then
that's
it
right. That's
wasn't.
right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm wrong because there was non UC schools as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, it's just like the Casa clubs at each
Mhm.
college, like in SoCal area, will compete and stuff.
Yeah.
So
What a
yeah,
throwback.
yeah. And now you're still dancing, and I'm still dancing too. So
Yeah. Yep, yep.
cool. So let's get into our first topic then. So as usual, like origin story. So my big questions for you and for the audience is kind of like how well kind of like where you grew up, what was your career aspirations, what were your main influences growing up,
Mhm.
and then we'll get into like all of these different hobbies and interests that you have because if people have read your bio, you kind of do all these things. But can you just walk us through kind of your origin story?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Orange County, California. So it's a pretty Vietnamese dominant area, but our family never really lived in the community. And so I went to schools that were like pretty about 50-50, like half Viet, half white. And even then I felt like I didn't really fit with either group. And so I was constantly like in this space of trying to find like a place to belong or a community to connect to. I started exploring a little bit more as I got into high school because I was in a very, very tiny middle school. There was like 30 people in our graduating class. and then jumping to a high school of like 3,300 people
Mm,
was a huge jump for me. So that was my opportunity to explore a little bit more, lean into some of the more creative things that I was doing. Because I was in a small or middle school, a small middle school, I was doing a lot of sports because that's all we had. And then when I got into high school, I was like, oh, we can actually do like creative stuff.
mm,
There's like singing stuff. Dance was not allowed for boys back then. It was
mm.
like a girls only sport, I
Boo.
guess. I
Yeah.
know. Boo. Where's the boo button? um, and then it was in university that I think I was really opened up to a lot of new opportunities, a lot of different things that I could participate in or that I can learn from. And so that was a very exciting experience for me. I think I found people to look up to, yourself, for example. And it was usually people who were committed to their craft, who were driven, who had purpose. And these are all things that I was searching for myself. I longed for community connection because, like I said before, I've always felt disconnected. And one of the ways that I was hoping to gain that sort of connection was through mentorships and things like that. So that's kind of how I got started in a lot of all of these things.
Mm,
That motivation generally drove me to find new spaces to step into, or gave me the desire to want to start new things or investigate new things to see how does it fit for me? How do I find myself in these spaces, or how do I participate in these activities or these communities?
okay. So like trying to find community, connecting, and you're trying these different things in different spaces. So were there any particular types of creative outlets or things that you felt like you latched onto or resonated with? You said it was a lot in university. Was there anything in high school or was like can you walk us through that?
Sure. The big one for high school was singing. So my sister started singing in our school's choir, and I was intrigued by that, so I joined, and I ended up doing choir for 3 years. So I started my sophomore year, finished out in my senior year, and I took a little bit of a step back once I got into university because I was part of this program at UCI called the Freshman Summer Start Program. And we were just walking from the university town center, from like getting in and out or whatever to campus. And we walked through a parking structure. And that's when I ran into MCIA.
Mm,
And I had never heard of a dance team before. I didn't know people dance as a thing.
mm,
The only dancing I understood was like, okay, you go to a wedding and you dance, and like, that's it. So I saw a group of these college age students just dancing in a parking structure. And so my friends and I just kind of stood there, and they saw us. And so they came over, introduced themselves, explained everything. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so cool. That's like really tight. I would love to do that. And it looks like everyone's having fun. Everyone's like tight with each other. That's community. And so I started investing a lot of time into dance throughout like my university years. Um, I took a step back from that when I moved to Asia, just because I found that the dance culture that we have here is very different from the dance culture they have over there. Um, and so what I ended up doing was reinvesting a lot of my time into singing.
mm,
So I was training with a company in Thailand. I tried out some things in Korea, not much in Japan. That was on me. I didn't really research. So,
mm,
and then after I moved back to the US, took a break from everything because of COVID. But post COVID, I kind of started running at both with like whatever the saying goes.
mm.
Like jumping into the deep end.
Mm, cool. So then, so you were trying out these new things. So you mentioned singing and dancing.
Mhm.
You were in like a graduate program too, right? Like a
Yes.
master's program.
Yes.
Um, and so I mean, we'll go into a lot of this stuff too, maybe a little bit at a time. But so how did you? What was your approach at that? I know you mentioned you're looking for feedback and kind of guidance or mentorship,
Mhm.
and you had all these different interests. Um, do you have any takeaways on, like, your approach there? What did you get out of that? Or, like, what was the intent? Like, what was your purpose of trying to, like, doing all this? Or was that just kinda like your mind? You're just like, "Oh, I just like doing different things."
I do like doing different things. I think my intention originally around asking for feedback was to please people,
Mhm,
because I was so disconnected and I had such a strong desire to want to be wanted, or to want to be invited to be around, or to be appreciated, to be recognized. Uh, my desire for feedback was that. It's just like
Mm,
just tell me what do I need to do so that you would want me here, so that someone else would want me here, so that I could feel like I belong here. And I think over time, as I became more self-aware and self-reflective of what some of these root causes were, or what was pushing me to act this way, I started to make a pivot,
mm,
right? So as I came into my adulthood, it more fueled my desire to be a better contributor. So it's me coming into this space, not necessarily asking, what can I do so that people will like me, but what can I do to contribute to this space, to help the space to grow, to improve whatever systems are already in place, or maybe just improve the vibe. And I think feedback has been very critical in allowing me to continuously stay adaptable.
nice. There's a lot of different threads there, and I feel like we're gonna get to some of those a
Mhm,
little bit later in the later topics, but I like that so far. One question I had is you being overseas.
mhm,
I'm sure that was an amazing experience culturally and
mhm.
also educationally, and socially as well. Were there any standout takeaways or kind of like how being abroad has changed you or insights that you've learned that you feel like other people could benefit from? I'm sure that can go really deep,
Yes.
but like, I guess any like that surface level stuff that you can touch on first, and we'll see.
Yeah. I think the biggest takeaway that I got first when I moved abroad was just do the thing.
Mm,
And that came because I realized, if people were doing things and I wanted to do it, but they don't want to do it a second time, if I waited, I would never do it.
mm,
And so I pushed myself to just do what I wanted to do. When I moved to Thailand, one of the things that I knew I wanted to do right away was learn Thai because I was like, sure, I'm in Bangkok. So are probably English speakers, there are probably people who can help me out. But is that how I want to be living my life while I'm here?
mhm.
And so I did research, I found a school, I studied, and within about 6 months, I was conversationally fluent,
Wow.
to a point where I think people were like, "Oh, are you like,
Like
so,
mixed or
yeah, are
something?
you
Yeah. Yeah,
mixed?
yeah.
Did you like go to an international school and use English mostly because your Thai is usable, but it's like your pronunciation is strange?"
Mm,
So yeah, I think just really do things is my big takeaway from living abroad.
I like that, and I feel like that's a common thread. Again, like knowing you and us being closer friends now, I feel like some one thing that I admire about you is like you actually do the things that you're interested in, even if it's like all scattered and here whatnot. But I feel like the problem a lot of people do is that they don't just try enough things to really
Mm,
feel like what resonates with them, and
mhm.
that's why they get stuck with like what they're doing and they're not feeling fulfilled. But I do appreciate that you are like, oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah, let's just do it, and then you just go for it.
Yeah.
Anything else that you would say like you learned abroad that kind of affected your current trajectory and or anything you can link to like your aspirations like career wise? I know that's another big
Mhm.
can of worms we can open, but
I would say another big takeaway is to not be afraid. Um, Specifically, not be afraid to be wrong. I think, especially as I was living in Thailand, Japan, Korea, some of the things that I feared at first was like, I don't want to have a cultural misstep. Um, it's hard because I look Asian, and so when I'm there, they expect me to know.
mm,
Or sometimes if I'm like walking around Korea and I don't understand Korean, they'll yell at me and they're like, "Why don't you understand?"
mm.
And I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry,
I'm new here.
I know I'm new."
I'm here.
So I think it was hard to feel like the pressure of like you have to be perfect, you have to be ready, and not be there. And so I had to work on myself in the way that I viewed myself to let myself know and remind myself constantly like it's okay to be wrong. It's okay for people to be mad at me or to be frustrated with me because I don't get it. What's more important is that I am adaptable and I adjust to what I can when I can. So if I don't know it now, now I'll know it for next time. But the fear that I feel coming into that should not prevent me from doing things or being prepared to come forward.
Mm, yeah, I like that. Okay. I guess anything else? Do you want to touch on anything about like career aspirations, or like how your journey up until
Mhm.
now is informed, like kind of like what you want to do, maybe not as a career, but maybe just your purpose or something that you're passionate about that you want to go all in on? Because I know there's a lot of things you like doing, and I
Mhm.
know you have a career, and I know you have career aspirations, just knowing you personally. But is there anything that's like, okay, here's my aspiration career wise, or even just purpose wise? Maybe it's not a career, but maybe it's just a purpose. Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, I think when it comes to career, early on, I felt this I think society-based pressure to choose one and stick with one and then run with it for like 50 years
Mm,
until I retire and or
50 to
die.
100 or 200 years.
Exactly. And I found that because my interests are so disparate, they're so all over the board, that it's okay for me to hop. And I came to terms with that when I realized, okay, I've touched like 3 or 4 different industries and I haven't really settled in anything, but I do love them all.
Mm,
So, do I have to pick? And I think that's when I ran up against that social pressure and I realized who says I have to, right? Like who says we need to just settle with one job or one industry? If I want to do one and then want to swap later, like who's stopping me? Sure, I might have to start over, but isn't that the fun part of starting a new project, right? Like beginning.
mm,
So that was one, but I do think that a lot of the things that I've learned in the past have driven me to be more ambitious when I enter an industry. So, for example, I am pretty new to project management and I only got into it because one, I talked to you about
mm,
it. And two, because I was in a position at work where it was pretty stagnant, nothing was changing, and I wanted, quite honestly, more money. And in order to get more money, I would need a new title. And so I approached my manager and I was like, what titles can we look at that will pay me better?
mm.
And what can I do to get from here to there?
Asking the right questions.
Yeah. And so I was just like, okay, great. I got the certification. I have the years now. Like, can I get the title and can I get the money? And then after I got it, I was like, what's next? Right. So, like, what can I do to keep growing and keep developing? And I think that sort of gung ho attitude was fostered by my experience abroad, going through graduate school, like you mentioned before. Right?
Mhm,
In graduate school specifically, like my advisory committee was very relaxed. The only times I ever saw them was when I scheduled with them
mm,
or when I pushed for them to meet with me. The only reason I had my defense dates was because I set them myself. And then I had the program follow up with the professors to make sure they would show up. So that sort of initiative, I think, has been integral to my career moving at all.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a common thread that as a outsider, as a friend, that I think people can learn from is that initiative that you take to kind of move your career or your aspirations in the direction that you want. Because I did a similar thing too, which was like, okay, I know where I want to be. I want to have a high position to make more money or whatever.
Mhm.
And then the jumps that we made through project management, like I think significantly increased our income. We don't have to talk about numbers, but like it's like, oh, this is very nice. This is a
Yeah.
nice jump for me personally. I will say like when I went from before project management and then getting more serious about it, like it literally doubled my income.
Yeah.
And so that's like a big ROI. And I think that mindset that you have is something that if people can ask those tough questions and be vulnerable and get coaching, it can pay off a lot.
Yeah. And I would even add that if anybody is interested, listen to JR. Like
Mhm.
that's my big
Thank you.
advice because
Thanks for the plug.
yeah, like even within the past couple months, I have also doubled my income in my work in
Nice.
project management. And
Love to
so,
hear it. We love money.
yeah, we love making money. We love making ends meet and being able to then like turn that resource around and fund our friends, fund our community,
Mm,
fund our
of
interests, right?
course.
So, shout out.
Yeah,
Shout out.
definitely. Um, so yeah, before we switch off of that, there was one thing I wanted to talk about.
Mhm.
Um, Actually, you know what? I think we're fine there. That was all gold. Okay, let's go. Actually, this is kind of not really a pivot. We're already talking about this, but the importance of coaching and feedback is the next topic that I want to talk about. I would say like the initial question is, what is the importance of coaching that it has in your life? Like, what role did it play, and like, what makes you want to seek out coaching? I know you mentioned just earlier that it's like that need to please people, but I know some of it is also like your own
Mhm.
inherent desire to improve and then to achieve, right? Like it's that inherent desire to become better. Was there anything else in the mix of that, like that made you seek out coaching or feedback or just that mindset?
I was thinking about this a little bit earlier in the week, and I actually don't know where that desire came from. I think, like I said before, it was rooted in like a desire of wanting to feel accepted, wanting to feel seen, and perhaps it's overlaid with like looking for the authority figure in the space to recognize me because that in my mind as an Asian, right, has more
Mhm.
more value, right? It's like, "Oh my gosh, the authority figure likes me, like, I'm doing great." You know? So I think that's probably where it was first planted.
Mhm.
And then I started seeing the benefits of actually tapping into that resource, looking to the person who has experience or who has authority or who has skill in that space, someone who everyone else looks up to, looking to them and then getting feedback from them has proven to be invaluable.
I totally agree. I feel like in any area in life that you want to grow in or shortcut the process and not bang your head against the wall, definitely find a coach or a mentor or someone who is where you want to be, has the results, and is able to teach you. Because there are people who have the results, but they're not good at teaching. And then vice versa. Like maybe you're a good teacher, but I also question if you don't have the results yourself, right?
Absolutely.
And so, like finances, fitness, we did for comedy, you know what I mean? Like all
Mhm.
this other stuff, super valuable. And then, like, career wise and everything else in between, if you want better results, you can just ask. But sometimes I feel like, I don't know if you haven't thought about this, but like there's something that holds people back. Like I think it's just
Mhm.
ego or just like pride, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that has really served me in this process is always humbling myself. Something that I've told folks before is I would much rather be the weakest person in the room than the strongest. And that's because being the weakest person, I have practically unlimited opportunities for growth. Everyone in the room can teach me. Everyone in the room has something that I can learn from. If I'm the strongest, now it puts pressure on me to be the one to lead, to be the one to teach and mentor and hand that off, which I think is a great challenge and a great opportunity, great experience. But it's definitely different from being the person in the room who gets to learn. And
Mhm.
I think that's what excites me about starting new projects or shifting into new industries. It's unlimited potential, unlimited opportunity.
Yeah. I've said that in an interview once where I forgot how the question goes, but my answer was basically like, I would rather be like the quote unquote dumbest person in the room because I know I'm in the right room. If I feel like I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm definitely in the wrong room,
Hmm.
right? Because you don't want to be, sure, as the smartest person in the room, you will probably get paid a lot. However, you will not learn and you will not like grow into the person that you need to
Hmm.
become. And also being on like competitive teams or even in my current team, where some of the, let's say, the less experienced people feel very demotivated that everyone's better than them,
Hmm.
and aside from the fact that obviously those people have been putting in the work, so of course they're going to be
Hmm.
better. But I always tell those new people that if you feel like you're the worst person in this room, it's you're in the right place because that's how you get better. And I'm assuming your goal is to get better, not to be the best, but to get
Yeah.
better. And so therefore you should see that as a sign that you are in the place you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Agreed. And I definitely struggle with those thoughts as well, right?
Mhm.
It's sometimes I'm like,
Yeah, we all do.
okay, I've been the worst in this room for quite some
You're like,
time
okay,
now.
I'm kind of tired of being the worst in the room now. When's it time for me to bump up a ranking?
Yeah, I was like, can I be like second
You say
worst, you
second worst
know?
or some sort of improvement.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's okay to feel that way, right?
Mhm.
It's the adaptability, the importance of recognizing, I'm feeling shitty today, I'm feeling poopy. Let's feel bad for a minute. And then now let's use that as motivation. Let's like turn that around and get this car going.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Um, any more takeaways from like coaching feedback or any good stories that you feel like stand out to you that was really a shift in your mindset or how you see things?
Oh, so many. Oh, I have so many. I think there was this one time when I was with my vocal coach and two other students, and the three of us were working on a harmony together, and he would cut us off like three notes in and then point at me and he's like, "You are fucking it up. You are the problem. Start again and don't fuck up this time." And I was like, "Okay." "Okay, I'll do my best." But obviously, right, like when you get into that
Yeah, yeah,
headspace, you're
yeah.
shutting down, you're not like responsive, you're not as adaptable. And he kept doing it, and he kept doing it, and he kept doing it, and so about an hour in, I was like, "Um, can I get one moment, please?" And then I stepped out and, like, sobbed, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so awful." I was like, "Okay," but we still have, like, a full session of ahead of us. I cried for 2 minutes. I was like, "Okay, that's a waste of 2 minutes," but not really because that 2 minutes allowing me to process through my emotions, right? I was like, "Okay, great. I'm gonna go back in, I'm gonna be productive, and we're gonna get this done." Great. I went in. We were not productive, but I think it was a useful learning experience because he did talk to me about it afterwards. He's like, "Okay, so this is normally not how you would go about any sort of music work, right? This is not how you would work with an audio engineer, a producer, a recording session. This would never happen. The reason why we do it like this here is because we're trying to amp up the pressure for you to learn how to handle pressure or handle negative emotions in a space in which you still need to get work done." And he was like, "Very clearly, you shut down." And I was like, "Yes, absolutely." And he's like, "Great. Now that we know that you shut down, or like we know where you shut down or why you shut down, what can we do to start addressing it? Right? Like, what can we do to start figuring out how to get you through this space?" And part of it was the way that I was talking to myself. And he had said, like, "Sure, I was saying you're fucking it up. But how are you taking that? Because if you're taking that as like, oh, yeah, you're right, I'm fucking it up, you're putting yourself down. Like, you are not meeting the obstacle with intention and strength and like purpose. You are letting it steamroll you." And so he's like, "When I come at you like that, when I say you're fucking it up, you need to be like, all right, I'm gonna show you that I'm not. Like, you're wrong. Like, I'm not the one who's wrong here." And he's like, "Yeah, that's the energy you need to come at it with, right? Like, when people are negative with you, you need to bring back more positivity, more energy." And I was like, "Oh, damn. I never thought about that." I was just like, I thought I was supposed to be steamrolled.
I thought I was supposed to cry.
Yeah, I'm supposed to feel bad, right? And he's like, "Well,
Well, you
like,
could, but, like,
yeah,
yeah.
what does that do for you? Like, who here benefits from that, including yourself? No one, right? But if you come back with vigor, right, and you do even better, who's gonna yell at you now? No one. No one can talk to you that way because now they know that if they present you a challenge, you're going to overcome it no matter what." And I was like, "Damn, that was good.
Mm,
Never thought about it that way."
yeah.
And he has this really trippy way of always connecting all of our lessons. And it kind of pisses me off
Mm.
because I was like, "Dude, how did I not see this?" But he connected it to a later lesson where he asked me to listen to other people perform and then provide feedback. And I was like, "Oh my God, that was so great, guys. Like, you guys sound awesome." And he's like, "Okay, that was the shittiest feedback I've ever heard, dude." And I was like, I don't know. Like, you could fix this? I don't know." And then he was like, "So the reason why you have like your feedback is so fluffy is because in your head you're afraid of being the asshole because that's how you talk to yourself. So when you mess up and you're like, 'Fuck, I fucked up,' that's the exact same intention that you're approaching other people with. And so when you hear something that you don't like, your brain, even though you might not say this, right? Your brain will say, 'Oh, they fucked up.' And that's why when people ask you to vocalize it, you can't because you don't want to be the asshole. So to fix that, be more intentional with your feedback with others." And he gave me this formula where he said, "Okay, you start with your highlight and you start with your areas of improvement. This entire thing is feedback. You have to do both. If you don't do both, it is not feedback.
Mm,
And when you provide this, you have to be specific. So it can't just be, oh, that was awesome. It has to be like, I liked how in this part of the song you did this because it made me feel this. What I think I would like for you to try in the second half is to do this so it changes the energy." So that level of intention shows consideration, right? Intent. So I'm not just listening, I'm like paying attention. And as I got better at practicing this for others, eventually it trickled back to how I was talking to myself. So in my own practices, I now have a healthier way of approaching like, oh, that didn't sound the way that I liked it, how I would liked it to sound. So what can I do to adjust it? Versus, ah, fuck, I suck. Like, somebody kill me. Oh my god, I'm gonna
mm,
quit. I'm over it. So I think that's like been some of the most helpful coaching things I've had. It's like really looking at how we engage with ourselves, with others, and allowing the two to connect, and then recognizing how the one impacts the other.
Mm, I like that. I think that's a well, that was amazing. Rewind that part if you need it. That's like feedback. It's I don't know. I feel like that was a masterclass in like feedback and how to give it. I think that transitions perfectly into the next topic, which is like therapy. However, I remember my old question, which was so we'll go back to career real quick and then we'll go back to like the topic number three. But my question for you is like, working in all of these different fields and also with your different interests and your different experiences abroad and education, are there any things like you said, I can work in any industry or like, just having an experience, but are there
Mhm.
any common threads that you feel like we have woven through all those things that connects you to what you think you are good at? Because you've worked in these industries.
Mhm.
And I'm asking this because also I know you as a friend and I kind of know the answer, or at least I have an answer in my head, but yours could be different. But do you feel like there's a common thread for all those things that like, okay, I've done all these different jobs and careers, but my higher thing is probably the thing that connects all those things because clearly it's what I'm drawn to or it's the thing
Mhm.
that's a common denominator.
I have considered this as well, just because back when I was wondering about like, oh my god, do I have to pick one job?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, what ties everything together? Let's just do that.
Yeah.
And I believe that the thing I strive for, no matter what industry I'm in, or no matter what hobby I pick up or activity I'm trying to do, the one thing that drives me is optimization and efficiency. I don't like waste. I don't like wasting my time. I don't like wasting my money. And I don't like wasting my energy. And so if I'm going to do anything, I'm going to make sure that it is giving me the most that I can get out of it. And I also strongly believe that anything you put into a thing, it will come back to you tenfold, right? So if I'm investing all this time, energy into my work, it's going to give me back dividends. Like the ROI is always great. So there's no reason to not give more. Um, Yeah. So no matter what I do, right? So even in service, I'm like, okay, I can make this process more efficient. I can line up how I'm like greeting guests, seating guests, taking their orders. How can I do this in a way that is most efficient and effective so that I'm getting people in, allowing them to have a great time, and then getting them out? And I think this has proven to be extremely helpful in my project management work. I'll get a process and I'll look at it. I'll find points that I can improve or points that I don't understand and dig into it more. It's like, why do we do it this way? Why not this way? Oh, okay, that doesn't work. Great. Now I have a better understanding of the system. If we can make that change, let's make it. Why didn't we make it sooner? And that has led to a number of my coworkers being like, how did we never think of this?
Mm,
Something as simple as like, why don't we just alphabetize our finance reports so we can find our clients quicker? And the finance department was like, "Oh, we never thought of that." I was like, "That's great. We have a solution now," right? Like solutions to problems we didn't know we had. And I think that carries over into my artistry as well, right? So singing and dancing. If I'm gonna sing and I'm in a recording session, I'm gonna make sure that I get the most out of this recording session that I can. I'm not gonna spend 30 minutes crying about it because that's 30 minutes wasted. I will cry for 2 minutes.
that's not optimized at all. Shorten
It's
the crying.
shorten the crying period so you can lengthen the productivity.
Mm, nice. I like that. I think that's one of the things I respect about you a lot, and also the reason why I think we vibe well is because like I also think that way. Like optimization, reducing waste. As project managers, we kind of see like the overarching structure and how to make processes more efficient.
Mm.
Because I feel like that just it's a tide that rise all right rise a rising tide that lifts all boats.
Mhm.
And so since we think similar that way, I think that's why we get along really well.
Yeah.
And I think also like in any future aspirations that you have in your career, if you were to do like some sort of business consulting, I feel like you'd be really good at it
Thank
because
you.
in any job that you do, I feel like you thrive in that sort of role to make things better for everyone. I feel like it's a huge value add.
Thank you.
All right, topic number three. So therapy. I know we've talked about this a lot, and you talk about this in your comedy as well, which I really enjoy.
Thank
We're,
you.
we're probably not going to cover stand up comedy in this episode, maybe in the future one, but that's one thing I love talking about because it's so much fun. Quick side note, it's like what's it called? Like, well, so Aiden will. we'll talk. Okay, there's the last stand up we did, right? A lot of my stuff is like Asian jokes because that's just kind of what I wanted to talk about,
Mhm,
right? But then and usually you'll talk about therapy or like gay jokes or something like that. And then
mhm.
but you went first, and then you told all these Asian jokes, and I'm like, "All right, guys." When I got up, I was like, "All right, Aiden told all the Asian jokes. I'm gonna tell all the gay jokes now."
Tight.
And you recorded my video for that. And you were
Yeah.
just dying, and
Oh,
I was
man.
laughing. I was like, "Yes, I got one laugh. It's
Yeah.
worth it."
Oh, definitely more than one, but
Yeah.
I was several of them.
Nice. So, anyways, so the topic of therapy, I feel like this is something that a lot of people can benefit from. A lot of people that we know have therapy, and it's kind of like a version of coaching, of
Mhm.
improvement feedback. I guess my question is like, what made you want to seek out therapy? And I guess what are some of the biggest insights or takeaways that you learned about yourself, or like the skills or tools that you've learned through therapy to help you manage whatever you're going through?
Hmm, good questions. Growing up, I was quite unhappy, with myself, with my family, my situation, whatever. I always found something to be, extremely unhappy about. And so at some point in my early university years, my mom approached me and she's like, "Can I get you a therapist?" And I was like, "You're paying, right? Because if you are, then yes, please."
Sure, why not?
I was like, "Yeah, that's like just added value for me, right? Like I don't spend anything and I get therapy. We love it, you know?" And I started off with a therapist that I was like very about. She was mostly a sounding board. So anything I said, she would say back. And I was like, yeah, like, I don't know. I think it's hard to talk to my parents. And she's like, so it's hard to talk to your parents. And I was like, yes, I just said that. And I was with her for maybe a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then I finally stopped seeing her. But at that point, I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna try to find a therapist that works for me. Like she might work for other people,
Mm,
and that's great for them, but I need to find someone who works for me. And so I was specifically trying to find like a queer Asian American. Um, and that's hard because we don't have like a very expensive network to like market
mm,
diverse therapists, right? It's like go to BetterHelp or whatever.
mm.
Don't actually. BetterHelp is bad for therapists.
Oh,
But um I put out an APB and then I had a friend reach out who's like, "Oh, well, I'm seeing this Asian woman and I think she's great." And I have now been with that therapist for years, 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 years,
oh,
years. I
nice.
feel like it's maybe 5 or 6 years now. And I love her. I love her. I see her every week. And through my therapy experiences, so the first therapist, she was like, "Oh yeah, dude, you're like super depressed and super anxiety. So here's some meds, just take it." I was like, "Okay, chill."
Nice.
Yeah,
Drugs.
we love drugs.
Mhm.
Can we say that? One second.
You guys can hear tone, right? That's called sarcasm.
Oh my lord. So stand up comedy, y'all. It's a joke.
Yeah, we're all just joking.
For legal purposes, this is
For
a
the
joke.
purposes, we're all just joking. Also, I'm never gonna get that BetterHelp sponsorship. Thanks, man.
I'm so sorry.
Just kidding. I don't care.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so I was on medication for a while, but my mother is a nurse and oof. But my mother is a nurse, and so her recommendation is to try to get off medication as soon as possible because she's like, adding all these extra chemicals to your body all the time isn't great. You're like, your body is meant to operate naturally. So use it if you need it, but don't become reliant upon it. And I was like, okay, great. She also said the SSRIs were negatively impacting our health insurance. So she's like, get off of it because it's making the insurance expensive.
Mm,
And I was like, tight, great to know. But that's when I started getting a lot more into this self reflective state, being able to work with my newer and now current therapist. She really pushes me for a lot of introspection. So I'll talk to her about, "Oh yeah, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I think." And she's like, "Okay, but why?" And I was like, "What do you mean why?" And she's like, "I don't know. You said like you're irritated. Why are you irritated?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's just I don't like it when people do this." And she's like, You don't like when people do that for why?" And really pushing that why forced me to face some issues that I had not considered before or issues that I had been trying to ignore. And the nice thing about that is now I'm starting to see the connective tissue between a lot of the things that I run into. So this behavior pisses me off across the board. Why? Oh, it's all tied back to how I perceive my value as an individual. And now I feel like everyone's poking it. And therefore, if I want to resolve this issue, I have to focus on how I interpret my value. And I think that sort of digging to the root cause is something that is so invaluable from a therapist. People are really in the weeds when it comes to their emotions, their experiences, and perspectives. And I think the value that you can get from a therapist is an outsider perspective from someone that one you can trust, but two can also know you intimately without knowing you, right? Because I could talk to you, but there's this connection that we have that now tints the way that either you perceive information I share you or I perceive information that you share me.
Mhm.
And that's something that I don't have to worry with about my therapist. I can tell her my entire life story and still be like, but we're not friends.
Mm.
And that's the professional line of therapy that allows you to be able to like poke these holes in each other and still be okay. I think it would hurt me if some like a best friend was just like, have you considered you're the problem? And I was like, okay, back up. That's not what I'm here for. Versus my therapist is like, okay, I think it's you. Like
Yeah.
the in this situation, it
Right.
sounds like you are the problem.
It's not personal, but it's like they're actual professional, like they've been listening to you, and that's what they think the problem is,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important to find a therapist who aligns with you and matches with you. My therapist laughs all the time, and I love it when she does because I
Mm.
was like, "Great, we're having a good time," you know?
You're like, I made you laugh.
Like, yeah, I was like, "I'm so glad you're laughing at my pain." Like, someone has to in order for us to optimize
There
pain,
you go.
you know?
And then use it for stand-up comedy material.
Exactly. And that's something I told my therapist as well. I was like, "Okay, I need you to calm down because the better you are at your job, the worst I am at comedy." Like, I have no content.
Oh
It's
no, your life
I
sucks.
know, it's just like, "Hi, everyone. I'm here to do comedy.
My life's great.
My life is
My life is
great." Like,
great. Great relationships. All right, thanks.
awful,
Yeah.
awful. That's no one
Boo.
enjoys that.
Tomato.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, that's some of the stuff that I've gotten through therapy. Definitely, like, introspection, and because you and I are both optimizers, we're always looking for ways to improve things. It's a very mechanical approach for
Mhm,
me,
mhm,
and the challenge that my therapist has now is to try to connect me on an emotional level to these behaviors that I have or these habits that I have. One of the things that she likes to remind me is she's like, "You're not a robot. You don't have to do it like that." And I was like, "What do you mean?
What
I
do
do
you
not
mean?
understand."
Do
Yeah,
not compute your advice.
exactly. Yeah. I'm like a friggin' Cyberman Dalek type thing. It's just like eliminate, delete, delete.
Yeah. My
Uh,
feelings are hurt.
yeah. What are feelings? Exactly. So sometimes she'll say like, okay, you experience feelings, and we know this because you get frustrated when you do because you want to be a robot, but just feel them. Just try that. Like, okay, you're feeling an emotion, sit with it for like 5 minutes. Start with that. Start with 1 minute. If that's what your capacity is at, just sit with your emotion and feel it. Don't try to logic it. Don't try to think your way through it or like process why through the emotion. Just feel the emotion. Allow it to breathe. And then you can work through it. But if you're skipping that part and you're working through it, then it's not doing for you what it's meant to do,
Mm,
which I think is very like the theme of Inside Out 1, right?
mm,
It's like, oh, sadness needs to feel something so you
yeah.
can move forward. But it's like, no, no, no. You know what? It's fine. We don't need to think about it. And I think that's what I have been doing for a long time. So,
Mm, I like it. And I like the movie reference too, because I think both movies are very impactful
hmm
as like a metaphor for like how we deal with our feelings
hmm
and how important they are. And it's the importance of not trying to hide or suppress or push them away. I feel like it was
hmm
pretty invaluable takeaway.
yeah.
And I feel like when you're as you're talking about that, like kind of like feeling your emotions and not being a robot. I feel like as another analytical type as well. Sometimes I do that. Like I'll respond to something that like hits me emotionally with just logic.
hmm
And sometimes if my energy is just drained, I'm like, all right, well, I'm a computer right now until I can get through the situation and then
Yeah.
handle it later on. So sometimes if like let's say I get to a situation where something hurts me emotionally or someone says something, right?
Mhm.
I would just turn it around and just be logical. I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is this." And they're just like, "Oh,
Mhm.
he's not receptive to that." And then all of a sudden it's like I can deal with that later. But I guess what I'm saying is sometimes I feel like I do use that as like a defense mechanism
Mhm.
when I can't handle the emotion in the moment, but then, you have to
Yeah.
come back to it eventually.
Absolutely, and I think that's something I learned is come back to it eventually,
Mhm.
and the sooner the better,
Right.
because my habit has been to be like, "Oh, I'll come back to it," and I just don't.
Mhm.
And it just piles and piles and
Right.
piles and piles up until one day I just collapse from the weight of everything I've collected.
Mhm.
So it's definitely important to try to piecemeal it and, like, come back to it when you can, as soon as you can, so that you don't collect it, and then, like, you'll be on that TV show Hoarders or something.
Mm.
It's like, "What are you hoarding?" Emotions. Yeah.
Emotions.
Yes.
Nice, I like it. Um, okay, a quick on that note too, like, have you heard that saying where it's like, like the life-changing magic of tidying up Marie Kondo?
Mhm.
A big takeaway I got from that was like the reason why we have so much stuff and we hoard is an emotional aspect, right? It's
Yeah.
it's the fear of losing something or the anxiety of not having something you'll need in the future.
Yeah.
And so that's why people become hoarders is because they feel like, oh no, but I don't want to forget this. I don't want to lose this thing.
Mhm.
Even though they don't realize like the significance of the thing that they have is in the intent, not necessarily the object. Because not all objects we have are functional. It's just like a
Mhm.
memorabilia, right?
Yeah.
Or a gift that you just don't want to throw away. But that gift's intention was already created and you've received it. So the physical thing is just a thing. And
Mhm.
then the anxiety over the future is like, oh, but I need to keep all these 10 different things because what if I need it tomorrow or in 2 years or in 10 years? And now you're just having real estate like stuff clutter your house. And that's just a reflection of your emotional state.
Yeah.
And so my personal goal is to like have as little things as possible. Obviously, we need functional stuff, but like I'm trying to get to that point where I can become a monk and not have stuff because I'm like
Mhm.
the less stuff I have, the more happy I am because I know it's just a reflection of my mental clutter.
Mhm.
But that's just how I see it. Anything else on therapy or big lessons or takeaways that you feel like were impactful for you?
I will say I think the nice thing about therapy is, like many other things, anything you take from it is applicable to other aspects in your life as well, or, like, other fields in your life. So, for example, I went to therapy to work on myself, to, like, not be so unhappy all the time. And what that has led me to is like clearer communication, stronger boundaries, better relationships with people in my family. Um, I've learned to like navigate things in ways that I hadn't considered before, not because therapy told me to, but therapy has given me tools to figure it out myself, or at least highlighted for me tools that I already have. And those things are really nice.
Right. It's definitely good investment of your time
Mhm.
to learn all those skills and share, pass along too, right?
Yeah, definitely. As I therapize my family members, it's like, "Have you considered
Yeah.
why are you talking to me like this?"
I like it.
Yeah.
You ready for rapid fire
Yes,
questions?
sir.
All right. On that note, too, I forgot just to circle back. You're like, yeah, therapists can tell you, I think you're the problem. Friends, I'll take it personally. I've told you you're the problem, like directly, like many times.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's one of the nice things about where my mindset has grown. I think
Mm,
I've gotten to a place where I want people to point that out to
it's
me.
a testament to your growth, and yeah, I
Yeah.
see it.
I think, like, as we were talking about before, like, there's this ego and this fear around, like, being wrong or not being good enough, and I have worked on trying to relocate that emotional home instead of being there to be in a space of, like, no, like, it's okay to be wrong,
Mm,
and honestly, if anything, it's better to be wrong because that gives you an opportunity to grow, and if someone is willing to tell you that, that means they trust you, and that means so much more to me than someone being like, "Oh, no, you're good, it's fine."
mm. Yeah, like lying to your face or just giving you
Oof.
the sugar coated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally fine. Okay, cool. I don't want to run too over, but let's go billboard questions. So if you could put up a sign for millions of people to see, what would it say?
Mm. Um, if you are right, you can gloat. If you are wrong, you can grow.
I like it.
Thank you. It
I
took
like
me a
it.
minute to craft that one. I was like, wait, how
It's
do
pretty
I
clever. Yeah. It's like a saying that we all know, or it's like an idea we all know, but I like the way you worded it. It's
thank
very
you.
interesting. What is one of the hardest challenges you face in your life? What did you learn from it?
I would say fixing my relationship with my mother.
Mm,
We've had a very like rocky relationship. So in the beginning it was very like idolizing my mother could do no wrong. She's perfect. I want to be her. And then it flipped when I realized that she didn't trust me the way that I trust her.
Mm.
And then it was like, I don't want to be anything like her. But at this point, it's a little too late because I spent like 2 decades trying to be her.
Right.
And then eventually we found balance. Through that process, that's when I learned how to apply my therapy and a lot of my coaching and like, oh, how can I learn to communicate with this person who has like a lifetime of experience and has gone through things that I won't go through. Right? How do I take what she's telling me, process it, and respond with my own opinions and perspectives, but in a way that she can understand? And if she doesn't, what can we do together to move forward? And I think that's been an invaluable tool for me to now expand to other relationships in my life.
Mm, I love it. And also, your relationship with your mom is like one of your most important ones. Of course,
Hmm.
you wanna fix that and make that stronger, right?
Yeah.
I think it's great. Self-inflicted wound. Do you have a story about something that's gone wrong in your life that's your own fault and you can't blame anyone else?
So many, so many.
Okay, top one, maybe two.
This one was real dumb of me. When I first moved to England, I got a credit card and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, cool, cool." So I know how this works. You charge on the card and then you pay it off tight. But I was clearly charging more than I was paying off,
Mm.
and I didn't understand the concept of like deadlines for credit cards or
Oh.
like a credit limit. And so I bought a ticket to Barcelona and I couldn't buy a ticket back.
Oh.
And I was like, why is my card not
Yeah,
working?
yeah.
And so I had to do an international call back home to my parents. And I was like, yeah, the weirdest thing, like it was working fine. And then now it's not working. Like, I don't understand. And my dad was like, let me check. Oh, you hit the credit limit.
Oh.
And I was like, there's a limit.
What?
I
Credit has a
thought,
limit?
yeah, I thought it was Mean Girls, like the limit does not
Ah,
exist, but
perfect.
apparently it does. And apparently it was not high because
Mm,
this was my first credit card and I was
mm.
still in uni. Um, so I'm very fortunate to have parents who are willing to support me. My dad was like, "Okay, I'm gonna get you a ticket back, but
Mm.
you need to like tighten
Get this
this
together,
ship."
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, great place to learn it in another country.
Oof. R.I.P. Me with like potentially not being able to get home.
Yeah. Nice. All right. If you could redo one thing, what would you do differently?
Oh man. I have a lot of regrets, and I think that's how I've learned. So sometimes I think about wanting to redo them, but I appreciate that I am who I am and my mindset is what it is because of them.
Of course.
So I think if anything, the one thing I'd want to redo is like teach myself more self-awareness at an earlier age. So that I can be more aware of like why my emotions were processing they were processing, why I was feeling the way I was feeling, and communicate it more clearly. For the first like 2 decades of my life, I think I was very belligerent, and my family didn't know what to do with me because they could never figure out why do you feel like this, or like why are you acting like this? Like we don't understand. And I was like, you just, like you just don't get it.
Yeah. And
And
you didn't even know yourself. I don't
yeah,
even know why I'm like
it was like I didn't get it, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that was the problem. So if I could change anything, that's I think what I would like to have changed.
Nice. Okay, similar vein. If you could give your younger self advice, any age, any time period, what would it be?
I would say don't wait for people to give you purpose, give yourself purpose. Don't look to receive value from other people, find value in yourself. And I think the unfortunate nature of the American education system is they teach you to be good rule followers,
Mm,
good instruction followers, good factory workers. And so by the time we get into university, we're pretty locked out of a lot of the adaptability and creativity
mm,
that is inherently born into a lot of us. Um, so I definitely got into points of my life where I was like, if you tell me what to do, I will be excellent at it.
mhm.
But you have to tell me what to do.
Yeah. I'm
and
a
I
great factory worker.
Exactly. And I think that prevented me from developing a lot earlier or learning a lot of the things that I had to learn much later in my life. So that's the advice I would have given myself. Don't
Nice.
wait, just do.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I see that as a side tangent, like my little brother, he just turned 14, I think, 13 or
Hmm.
14, and he's like a really rambunctious creative kid. And I always tell him and my parents, I'm like, okay, look, like school is gonna teach you how to be a good worker, right? And that's great. But Daniel, my brother, is like a really creative kid, and I'm like, try to protect that creativity and like that sort of eye of like how he approaches the world because he is a very
Mhm.
creative person, like genuinely. Because like school is gonna force you into like this sort of track and like to
Yeah.
think this way, show up on time, and all this other stuff, which is fine. Do your best and don't slack off, but also realize that there is school doesn't value like that sort of creative mind aspect as much, or like figuring yourself
Mhm.
out as much as but if you do figure that out, you'll be like leagues of ahead of everyone else who's just trying to show up on time and follow their work.
Yeah.
And then once you graduate and find your job or whatever, it's like you're gonna be like much better off for that.
Yeah, and it's ironic because once you get out of school,
Then they're
what
like,
they want is your
"Where's your critical
creativity.
thinking?"
Yeah,
You're like,
exactly.
that's not what we learned."
Yeah, they're like, "We don't want factory workers at this point, like, to get further in your career, we want you to be creative." And
Mhm.
so I think it's very interesting that
Yeah,
it's
they flip it on you afterwards.
exactly
All right, next question. In the last few years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has improved your life?
listening. I I know it
I'm
seems
glad you started
obvious.
listening. That's
I
great.
know, it's real hard, y'all,
He's been
like
going through life just like this, like, "Hello, what?"
absolutely, 100%. That's something I learned from my vocal coach because he would give me new songs and then he would say like, "Okay, learn this, sing this," and then I would sing it, and he's like, "Did you even listen to this song?" And I was
So I
like,
don't think you're hearing the same song I am because that was
"Yeah." It was just like, "Dude, yeah, of course I did." And he's like, "Then why don't you know how it goes?" And so he had started workshopping with me. It's about how to listen, not just like listening for like, oh, what am I listening for? Notes, okay, great. Melody, great, whatever. No, it's like looking for intention,
Mm,
right? Like purpose, design, and listening without thinking first. And I think that's something that's hard for me because especially as an optimizer, my brain's always like, okay, I hear, what can I do? What can I do? What can I
going
do?
to solution, not
Exactly.
necessarily like waiting for the input and figuring it out.
Exactly. And so one of the things that he has emphasized for me is like listen first and then take time to think.
Mm,
Then you can respond. But if you're hanging on to a response while you're listening, you're not listening because you're hanging on to that response. That's taking priority. It's sucking up your capacity.
mm,
And that is now preventing you from actually hearing what the song is doing and how you can move through it. People have to listen first. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And he's like, this is true of anything. Like, you're hanging out with people and everyone's like clamoring to talk over each other. No one gets anything out of the experience, but you get the most value when you actually listen to each other, right? If someone's saying something and you make the eye contact and you listen and you respond with intention, even if other people are clamoring over you, that one person will recognize that you were listening and it'll have impact. And I was like, oh damn. And he's like, yeah, that's how you set the vibe, dude. Like, you think you just walk into a room and it's all Gucci? No, you gotta listen. And I was like, good point.
nice. I mentioned this before, but I feel like your vocal coach and I would be best friends or something.
Oh, he's Filipino, so he's right out
There
there
you
with
go.
you.
Filipinos who like have that same brain. I
Yep.
don't know if there's the world needs more of us, but whatever. Cool. Next question. If you knew, oh, sorry, who would you call successful, and how do you define success?
um, Honestly, anyone who mentors me is someone I would say is successful. Anyone like my vocal coach, um, yourself. And the reason why I say that and the reason why I define success is because for me, success is having intention and purpose behind what you say you will do and then doing it.
Mm,
That sort of reliability to me is success. So your goal can be as simple as like, I want to cook more. And now you cook more. To me, that's amazing. A lot of people fail on the goals that they set themselves, whether big or small. So if you can do a small goal and then succeed, great. If you say, I want to open a company, I want to run this business, and you work towards it and eventually you get there, that's also success. And that's something I aspire to. That level of reliability, of confidence, of saying, like, I will do this, and then knowing that I will do it and I will get it done. And not only that, but getting it done to good quality.
right. The degree that you want to do it.
Exactly. Optimize.
If you knew you couldn't fail, what would you try, or what would you be doing right now?
I think my selfish response is like I would love to be more of a performing artist. I would love to sing more. I would love to dance more. But I think what I actually would like is to open a community space, like a cultural hub, where We have food sourced by local vendors, made by local folks, clothing, art, books sourced by local folks. And then we can have like cafe days, work sessions, board game nights,
Mm.
but also a stage or a community space where
Community
people can
performances and stuff.
exactly.
Mm.
So it's like, oh, we have open mics or we have like little community shows put on. And you don't have to pay to be here. If you wanna pay for stuff, great, like, right? Like, pay for local vendors. Like, you wanna pay for this person who made a T-shirt in their bedroom, right? Like, great, pay them, right? Um, but you don't have to pay to be here, whereas some spaces, I know it's like, "Oh, like, restroom for customers only."
Mm.
I totally get it, but I think that's oppositional to the energy of a community that I would want to build, and so that's the kind of space that I would love to see and love to be a part of.
Yeah, I love it. We talked about this before, but like we have similar goals, aspirations because I also do want to like run a cafe, own it, and not as like a space for me to like make a ton of money, but as like my fifth business. It would be like a space where like I know it's not going to make money, and that's not the point. It's to build a community because I
Mhm.
feel like there's a lot of ROI that's not the bottom line that you get from something like that.
Exactly.
All right, we're almost there. So, what is one of the best or most worthwhile investments that you've ever made, either in time, money, energy, or whatever?
Mm. I know this sounds a little hokey, but I will say people.
Mm.
I think investing time, energy, money into the relationships that I have around me has proven to have great ROI. I'll meet people, and my desire to want to build a relationship with them will naturally lead me towards wanting to invest that time, energy, and money into them. And when I see reciprocation, I just up my investment. And I have found that that generates like one, a strong relationship where people know that one, I'm reliable because if they ask for something, I'll do it. If I say I'll do it, I'll do it. If I can't, I can't, you know. But that has also like linked me to other great people and has linked me to other great opportunities. So, for example, even between us, right? Like working with you at cafes, doing stand-up comedy with you, I have a strong desire to continue to want to invest in our relationship, and it's proven to yield great, great outcomes for me, right? My career is better, my finances are better. I've met some great people, like for example, Kat and I are besties now, and I met her through you. And I think that's like invaluable. I know I say that a lot in this podcast, but
Yeah.
like that's really what has been the greatest investment for
Mm,
me.
nice. I would say that's like, oh, that's such an Aiden answer, but not in a bad way because that's also my answer.
Yeah.
So yeah. Last couple favorite recent purchase under or around $50 to $100 that has impacted your life in the
Mm,
last 6 months. You can change the parameters, but
sure. Um, I would say paying an interpreter to do in language voice acting for my short film.
oh, nice.
Because I could have easily just had the short film in English,
Mm,
but I was like, I kind of want to change it up. The actors are already Asian, the staff's already Asian, so why not pick like an Asian language and then have them interpret the script into their language and then voice act it.
mm,
Um, so you may not know this, but I had Ed, one of our dance friends, interpret or translate the script that I had written from English into Korean and then had him voice it. And then we dubbed it over the short film.
mm,
And for me, that was just an added layer and added nuance to what I wanted the audience to get. And one of the people who had watched it was a coworker of mine, and she married a Korean guy. And she messaged me separately, and she's like, "I was watching it, and my husband walked into the room, and he's like, 'What are you watching?' And then he sat down, watched it with me, and then cried."
mm,
And I was like, "Aw." And she's like, "Dude, like, no, that's crazy." Like, and so for me, that was like great value. I was just like, "Oh, dang, I'm so glad. I'm so, so glad that we
mm,
did that because it's showing that it has impact. Like that decision isn't just like, oh, you know what, like whatever, let's just let's do whatever, you know. Like there was intention behind it, and that intention was met by the audience,
mm,
and it had impact. So for me, that really was important in developing my artistry as like a director or as a producer of this short film. But at the same time, it was also like invest in your friends and pay artists.
Right.
I know a bunch of people are like, oh, like let's get friends to do it, then it's free, haha. And I was like, no, pay
Mm,
your friends
yeah.
because if anything, their labor should mean more to you.
Of
Their
course.
efforts and their
You're
contributions should mean
supporting
more.
them, taking
Exactly.
advantage of your friends.
Yeah. And I think that, sure, saying like, hey, I'm gonna pay you money is a motivation for folks to do stuff, but it's also a way for me to express my gratitude
Yeah.
because sometimes they'll be
Gratitude,
like,
respect. Yeah.
it's okay, it's fine. I was like, no, 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 no.
Mm,
You're my friend.
mhm,
I want to make sure you get paid.
mhm.
And I want to make sure you get paid well. So you're gonna get paid better than industry standard?
Yeah. Nice. And are your short films like online, like link?
Yes.
Okay, we'll link to them.
Tight.
So yeah, I just want to throw that in. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up soon, and we're over
Yeah.
time. Favorite books, movies, videos, articles, media that you share or recommend the most?
Favorite book, Please Look After Mom by Shin Kyung-suk. It's
Mm,
been translated into English. Great, great, great book. 4 sections, each from a different perspective of a different family member, upon the disappearance of their mother. And
nice.
so I read through it and I was like, this is riveting because I see aspects of myself in different family members.
Mhm.
And then I was like, oh, I understand this perspective, even though I don't see it, because I was like, oh, yeah, like that makes sense on family dynamics and whatever. And then you finally see the mother's perspective at the end. And I was like, oh my God,
Oh,
I'm
oh no.
crying.
Uh-oh.
I need therapy.
I can
Where's
feel
my
this.
therapist?
Yeah, I can feel it.
Yeah, so that book has been my number one recommendation to everyone.
Mm,
Strong, strong, strong rec. She's an
nice.
amazing author, and she recently released a second book, um, called "I Went to See Father." So I
Uh-oh.
just bought it. I'm so ready to like
Nice.
dig through it, and I'm about to bawl my eyes out.
Nice.
Movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. Please, please, please watch it. Great book,
Nice.
movie.
Good Rex. Okay, we'll link to those as well. All right, that is it for rapid fire ending questions. So gratitude, we like to end with it. Aiden, what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for community. I'm grateful for mentors, coaches, therapists, family, and I'm grateful for you,
Thanks, man.
as well as this
Same.
wonderful podcast
I
space.
know at Podcast Place, shout out Solomon. He's the best.
He's the best.
Yeah. Um, cool. Any final ask from the audience or any takeaways that you want them to have from this conversation?
Sure. Let's do two. So, actionable next steps.
Yeah. Your
Very project
business
manager
consulting,
of me.
project management. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Actionable next steps. Get a therapist if you can. If your insurance will cover it, if you have a mother who will pay for it,
Mm.
like get a therapist.
Get adopted by Aiden's mom so she can pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely get a therapist if you can. I would recommend shopping around. It's totally okay to schedule a couple therapists, see who you like, and then eventually settle on one. It's like dating. You need to find the one that works for you. Okay. Um, the second thing, a little bit not as actionable, in its immediacy, but interrogate your intention. I think people who sit down and really ask themselves why they do something, for what reason they do something, um, why they do it the way that they do it. When you interrogate these things, you learn a lot about yourself. And that in turn also helps you learn a lot about how other people operate. And so, really, really interrogate your intentions and then move with it.
Nice. I like it. All right. So last thing is where can we find you? If people want to connect, see what you're up to, whatnot, we'll link your socials, but where can they find you?
So, you can find me on Instagram at Aeden Anthony. Aiden is spelled Aeden, and then Anthony is spelled like Anthony.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, tight. And then on that Instagram, there's also my link tree, which will link to my YouTube. So through
Oh,
my
there you go.
YouTube, you can see some of my
We'll link to
creative
that.
pursuits. So short films, dance
This dude
videos.
literally does everything. So if you need insights, he's got you.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up. So thank you, Aiden, again for being here. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure our audience will learn a lot from it. And then to sign off, thank you guys for tuning in, listening, watching wherever you are consuming this. Just a reminder to always be kind to others, especially yourself. And then just like Aiden's vocal coach says, just the power of listening. You can always learn something from someone if you take the time to listen. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.